So with that, we're done with sign up failure, and now it's time to get this form actually working. Let's close things down here. And let's go back to our original sign up page. So let's just remind ourselves where we are. Let's open up the users controller. So in this section, we're mainly going to be dealing with this line here. That's currently a comment that says handle a successful save, and we want to replace it with the actual handling of the save. But if you think about it, we're pretty much done already. If at user.save, this actually does the save if the submitted information is valid. So the only real challenge here is to figure out what to do if the save is successful. Here's a mock-up of what a successful sign-up might look like. What we have here is the usual site layout, and then inside there's the user profile page that we worked on in the last lesson. So this is just an image. This is Raoul Duke. So by the way, this is a picture of me at RailsConf 2009, which was in Las Vegas. And Raoul Duke was the character in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I bore a striking resemblance to him, so I threw it in the book. Notice there's something else here on this page, though. Before, when we had a profile page, we didn't have anything up above the profile information, but here we do. We've got a little message that says, "Welcome to the sample app." So the part of this section will involve not only going to this user profile page after submitting the sign-up form, but also putting this message into the page. Of course, as usual, we're going to write our test first, so let's do that. And what we want is a new describe block here for, instead of failure, success. And so we can just follow the model from the describe failure. Let's take a look at this before each block. So here is this blank or empty sign-up information. What we need now is an attributes hash that represents a valid user. So let's do that first. Let's go down here and do before each. Let's do attributes hash equals okay, now let's put in our specs here. What do we want this to do? Well, in our failure block, we said it should not create a user. But we can start off with it should create a user. It should create a user. And we can even write this right now. As you can probably guess from the model up here, it's going to use a lambda block, so let's put that in. Lambda do end, and then same thing inside. But of course the attributes hash now is the valid attributes hash from right here. And now we're going to say dot should change user count. And we could leave it this way. This is actually a good test, but there's a nice syntax for specifying exactly how much it should change the count. We don't just want to test for the changing of the count in general. We want to make sure that it changes it by the right amount. In particular, it should be dot by 1. We can save this, and we should be at red at this point. And now let's think about what we want to do after it creates the user. Well, up here, with a failed creation, it renders the new page. But we saw from our mockup that after creating a user, we should redirect to the user show page. Let's say it should redirect to the user show page. So it's the same thing, post, create. And now we're going to say response. In the past we've done dot should be success, but now we're going to say should redirect to, and then the path to the user. So response dot should redirect to, and now what's the path for this user? Well, remember we've got the helpers for paths. Let's take a look at that. Remember we've got the HTTP requests, URLs, actions, and then there are named route helpers. And to get the path to a particular user, you use the named route user path and then the ID of the user. And we saw in the last lesson that we could actually do user path and the full user object. Rails knows to use the ID in that context. In fact, let's see where that is. That's on the home page, right? Yeah. So this. Oh no, it's the sign up path. Where was this? Oh, it was on the user profile page. Right, user show. Yeah, so link to user path. Now remember, this was the link text. This is not the actual URL. We did do user path at user. This is the URL, but we've discovered that we could omit the user path part, and Rails is so smart that it actually knows to do the user path to this user. Unfortunately, inside of RSpec, you can't do that. It would be nice if we could just say redirect to the user, but we actually do have to do the user path. So user path. And what is the user here? Well, we saw in the last lesson that inside of a test, there's this thing called assigns. Let's take a look in this file. So assigns of user pulls out the @user variable from the action. So this @user variable, we can pull it out. Actually, we don't need this space. We can pull out this @user variable by using assigns of user in the test. So let's go down here. If we do assigns of user, this is the user, and so this is a test that that the response redirects to the user show page. And we've got our two failing tests. Let's get them to green now. So if we look inside this part of the branch, we can get rid of handle a successful save, and all we need to do is redirect to the user URL. So let's do redirect to. This is how you redirect inside of a Rails action. Redirect to, and then we could do user path at user. Let's do that. Let's get that to work. User path at user. See if this gets us. This gets us to green because now the @user.save works. Before it was actually breaking. If you looked at the auto test output, it was actually breaking because there was no valid template. In fact, let's do that. Let's get back to red. Let me show you how that works. So the @user.save is actually happening. So it's saving the user, and so in principle this dot should change user count by 1 ought to pass, except it doesn't work. It complains because there's no template corresponding to this branch. What happens is if @user.save it does nothing, then it falls off the end of the action, and it tries to render an action, or sorry, it tries to render a view called create, and there is no such template. Missing template user/create. But if we uncomment this, now we're green because the save goes through properly, and it in fact does redirect to the user path. So now that we're green, let's refactor this a little bit and show you that in fact you can redirect to @user. And there we go. Just rerun the test suite. Excellent. Now remember from our mock-up that we want to do more than just redirect to the user profile page. We actually do want to say welcome to the sample app inside of some little message area. So that's the last little detail we need to finish right here. And just to remind you of how this works, I'm going to recall something we did previously in the console. We saw briefly in the context of the demo app that there is a way to make a temporary little message on a page, and you might remember that we called it the flash. And later on in lesson 4, we used a flash hash as an example. Let's just remind you of that. So flash this is a hash with 2 keys. And this was our example of iterating through a hash, flash.each. Remember, hashes are enumerable, so they have an each method, do, and then the key value pairs, key value. And we're just going to, let's put s the key, put s value. And there we go. Success, it worked. Error, it failed. before we called inspect on these guys, but since we just did put s key here, there's no colon on success, in case you're wondering why that happened. So this just shows that we can iterate through a hash like this with key value pairs. And it turns out this is exactly the data structure that we need in order to do the flash message in our Rails application. And what we're going to do is put it in the site layout so that anytime there's a flash, it will automatically get displayed. So let's go to our site layout. It's an application.html.erb. So let's put the flash just above the yield here, just above the thing that gets rendered for each individual page. So I'm going to use some embedded Ruby, but it's not the %= one, it's just the %, because I'm going to iterate through the flash. It's just going to be what we did in the console. Flash.each. So you can see here that Rails provides us with this flash hash automatically. It has key value pairs, and typically it will have keys like success, notice, or error. So key value, and then let's put in a div with class equal to flash. And I'm going to give it a second class, and this is a little bit hairy in terms of the nesting of things. This is embedded Ruby inside a class string. So here's some embedded Ruby, and I'm going to put in the key. So for example, if the key is success, then this will have a success class. If it's an error, it will have an error class. So it's key. And this will allow us to style the flash, the different kinds of flash messages in different ways. And then, of course, inside here, I want the actual value. This is what the message is. And notice I am doing the % equals because I actually want to interpolate these into the view. And that's it. This is our full Flash implementation. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more thing. In fact, actually, let's leave it like this. Let's see what happens if we save it and run our test suite. Yeah, just complete and massive fail. So see if you can figure out why. This will happen sometimes. It's like, oh my God, what did I do? And the reason is that you can see there's a syntax error. So this is right here. I forgot the end. I mean, I remember the end, but I wanted to show you what happened. So end. This just ends the block. And now if I save it, let's rerun the test suite just to be double sure. Good. So now we're green. And now we're actually going to write a test for this particular flash message. So it should create a user. It should redirect to the user show page, and it should have a welcome message. We'll post create. And now I'm just going to say that the flash should match. I'm going to use the explicit way to do a regular expression match, which we've actually seen once before. Dot should equals tilde. And let's just say welcome to the sample app. And let's not worry about case sensitivity. I'll just put an I at the end to make this case insensitive. Let's see how this works. See if we're red. Okay, so now let's look at our user's controller. And before we redirect, we want to set the flash. Remember, it's a hash. It's effectively a hash. Flash success equals welcome to the sample app. So let's save this and see if it works. We should be green at this point. Oh. All right, this failed because we are actually comparing the whole flash. We actually want just the success part. So let's go back. This is one of the many reasons it's nice to have tests. In this case, the error was actually in our test, but it's still nice to know that things aren't working when they're not working. Let's take a look at this. I'm just going to comment this out and make sure that we're red. And now get to green. There we go. There's actually a second way to do this flash success. Let me show you that. Do flash success and then welcome to the sample app. Now that we've got a test, it's easy to refactor this. Now you can do it in one line. And in fact, if you use the error or notice keys, you can omit the flash part of this. And we'll see an example of that in lesson 10. And at this point, our application should be ready. Notice how little we've been looking at the browser for this controller action stuff. We've looked at the browser when dealing with views, but otherwise we haven't been actually clicking on anything. Okay, let's take a look at the form and give it some valid data. Say the name is Rails Tutorial. Example at railstutorial.org. And remember, I've associated this email address with a particular Gravatar image. So we should see that. And then a password and the confirmation and see if it works. It's taking an awful long time, and look at that. We've got an error. So I actually knew this was going to happen, but it might happen to you, and in case it does, I wanted to show you what to do. This is an SQLite 3 busy exception in users control to create. You can see it says database is locked. And the reason for this is the console that we've been running. So remember, we actually did a user.save when we ran this console in a sandbox, and that locks up the database, it turns out. And so what we need to do is just quit out of the console, and then we can just go back and redo it, and it should work. So I need to retype the password. It gets cleared automatically if it's a password field. And there we go. I don't want to remember this right now, but look at that. Welcome to the sample app, Rails tutorial, and then the sidebar. So this is the Flash message, and you might remember that we just put a Flash div in with a CSS class corresponding to the kind of message it is, in this case a success message. And yet, look at this, it looks nice, like without any work. So if we look inside here, we can see div class equals Flash success, welcome to the sample app. And so there's these two rules, Flash and success. It turns out it's just success alone that's doing the work for us, because Blueprint actually comes predefined with this kind of styling. So let's look. It's in public. I've actually navigated to it already. Public style sheets, Blueprint, screen.css. Remember, that's if you look at application.html.erb. Actually, it's in style sheets. It's in the style sheets. Here we go. Remember, we included the style sheet link tag blueprint/screen. So that's screen.css. And if you look at the file for the word success, here it is. Like there's this section here that does some general styling on the success class, and then there's some background color and some coloring and a border color. So that's why this looked nice just out of the box, because Blueprint came with it predefined. Now, as you may recall from the demo app, the whole point of the Flash message is that it disappears after this one request. I think the name is probably motivated from the idea of Flash memory storage. So you can just clear it by, say, reloading the page. And there it goes. Now it disappeared. But our user is in the database, as we can find out if we go to the console. Let's open it. We don't need to do a sandbox this time. We're not going to do very much here. We're just going to look to see if the user is there with user.first. And let's take a look. And there's the user. So the user is actually in the database. And we can even see that the password encryption worked, the salt worked, and so on.